surfing instructor who trained hundreds of children at a local surf center. He leaves behind his parents and a partner of 6 years. Master Sergeant Reserves Kalkidan Mehar was 37 from Petach Tikva. Kalkidan emigrated to Israel from Ethiopia to join the Israeli Defense Forces nearly 20 years ago. The terrible news fell hard upon his mother, who's still living in Ethiopia. Both were reservists, members of a citizens' army that left their families and loved ones to defend our nation. Both fell fighting Hamas in central Gaza on Sunday. Our hearts go out to all the families of those who paid the ultimate sacrifice in this war. May their memory and the memories of all the fallen always be a blessing. I want to draw your attention to 3 important issues today: Rafah, humanitarian aid, and the hostages. Firstly, to the statement made by the Prime Minister in the last couple of hours. Quote, "The idea that we would stop the war before achieving all of its goals is out of the question. We will enter Rafah and eliminate the Hamas battalions there, with or without a deal, in order to achieve total victory." End quote. Make no mistake, our war aims remain the same: destroy Hamas, bring home the 133 hostages, and ensure that Gaza no longer poses a threat to Israel. Next, on COGAT, which coordinates the entry of aid into Gaza. The amount of humanitarian aid going into Gaza has significantly increased and will continue to increase in coming days. The issue was never getting aid into Gaza, but getting aid around Gaza to those that need it before being stolen by Hamas. Since the start of the war, more than 26,000 trucks worth of aid has gone into Gaza. That's more than 480,000 tons of aid: food, water, medical supplies, and shelter. We've made increased effort, opening the port of Ashdod, the new crossing into northern Gaza, aid from Jordan via Israel through Kerem Shalom. With the World Food Programme opening of bakeries in the north and south of Gaza, with the US Central Command temporary maritime pier for ship-to-shore aid delivery, more humanitarian safe zones in Gaza so aid can easily reach Gazans. To reiterate, getting aid to the people of Gaza is a top priority. Our war is with Hamas, not the people of Gaza. We see the suffering of civilians as a tragedy, while Hamas sees the suffering of their own civilians as a strategy. That brings us to an end of today's briefing. Please ask your questions in the chat box, and don't forget to state your name and your outlet, please.
Thank you. First question from Melanie Lidman at AP. Can you give any more information about why the War Cabinet meeting was cancelled this evening? And do Netanyahu's comments earlier today mean that a hostage deal is off the table?
Melanie, thank you very much for your question. As you know, I obviously won't be commenting directly on hostage talks, whether or not a deal has been made or anything of that nature. There are literally lives hanging in the balance. The War Cabinet's decision, likewise, they will meet if and when they need to meet, and that doesn't need to be publicized.
Thank you. Next question from David Clement, the News Forum. US Secretary of State Blinken said that Israel has yet to present a credible plan to protect civilians ahead of invading Rafah. What steps will be taken to protect civilians when the IDF goes into Rafah?
So this is a question that comes up often and has done for some time. But there's a clear historic precedent as to how the IDF has already operated in Gaza vis-a-vis getting civilians out of harm's way. Now, we have a proven track record of getting civilians out of harm's way in the north, in the center of Gaza, and now we're talking about the southernmost tip, Rafah. So the Prime Minister, from the very beginning of any discussions on Rafah, requested that we get a multi-pronged plan a two-pronged plan, I should say, which involves both getting the civilians out of harm's way and then going after Hamas. Our fight is with Hamas, not the people of Gaza. And we will do, like I said, what we've already done elsewhere in Gaza. Let's not forget that many of these people that went to Rafah went, on their own accord, under the instruction of the IDF, because they understand that the IDF cares more about the civilians of Gaza than Hamas. Hamas uses the civilians of Gaza as human shields, and the Israeli army, the IDF, does its utmost to avoid civilian casualties. So we will do that. But make no mistake, we have to go after the last 4 Hamas battalions, terror battalions. They must be broken apart, destroyed, so that Hamas can no longer pose a threat to Israel, so that Hamas is no longer in political control of Gaza, and so that the people of Israel can sleep better at night, knowing that we're no longer threatened by a genocidal regime next to us that has said that they will do October 7th again and again and again if given if given the option. We won't give them that option.
Thank you. Question from Fred Ager from Interplanetary Television. What's Israel's response to the ICC arrest warrants against Israel's government officials?
So I've certainly seen reports of that. I'm not sure that there's been an actual decision made or anything of that nature. What I can tell you is that these discussions are purely political. This is not a serious court in the sense that it could just, put us on trial in that way. Israel is not party to the treaty. Israel is not a member of the ICC. What this would do, if it actually happened, would be to defame Israel in a serious manner, would be to endanger our soldiers who are day in, day out doing their utmost to avoid civilian casualties, adhere by humanitarian law, and go after the genocidal regime of Hamas and their terrorists. So we've not seen anything of this nature before, of the ICC going after a democracy, going after an active prime minister in the middle of a war for our very survival. This all doesn't smell very good at all, and is purely political. So I would ask anyone involved to put the brakes on any decisions like that, because they would damage Israel at a time when we are doing our utmost to save lives both in Israel and in Gaza, when we're doing our utmost to avoid civilian casualties while ridding the world of a genocidal terror organization backed by a genocidal state, Iran.
Thank you. That was the last question.
Thank you very much. We'll be back same time, same place tomorrow.